Hello and welcome to this little Spalluccipedia video, another dive into the ever-expanding universe of my investigator of the paranormal, Sam Spallucci. Today I want to have a little chat about some characters called the Thornthwaites, who live on Whitbarrow View Farm, who we come across in Fury of the Fallen. But before I ramble on for a few minutes, please give me a quick like. And if you fancy, give me a quick subscribe. That way you'll get all various bits and bobs crop up in your recommended videos. And hopefully you might recommend them to friends, which is even better. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm talking to a human being out there at the moment. I can see monsters in the background, but hey, that's just my little world. Anyway, so on with the Thornthwaites. Now, when I write my Sam books, I always just like the author's notes at the end. And occasionally I say, oh yes, bits and pieces of this are all made up. It is fiction after all. And sometimes I'll say, some of this is based on real life. And bizarrely enough, the Thornthwaites fall into that latter group. In the case of the generous genie in Fury of the Fallen, Sam and Spliff travel up to the wilds of Cumbria in early December to go and pick up the Christmas tree for the chapel at Moonside University, which we see is one of Spliff's long-standing traditions, along with putting the lights up on certain days, falling asleep during somebody's sermon over Christmas, that sort of thing. And Sam despairs at this every year because he gets dragged along. Spliff doesn't drive, so he has to use Sam as his personal chauffeur, especially as at this point Sam is kipping on Spliff's sofa, so he feels like he's duty-bound to do it. And we say to ourselves, well, why don't you want to do this, Sam? You can go and see the Thornthwaites. They're lovely, lovely people. Surely if Spliff wants to go and see them every year. And Sam regales us with a couple of explanations as to why. He's just like, oh, do we have to? The first is when one year they turned up and they had the fire going in the living room. But rather than just having normal lumps of firewood, they had a huge log rammed into the fire, burning at the end, with a chicken sleeping on the end. And another time they turned up and there was a horse asleep on the sofa with a duvet over it because they'd been told by the vet that the horse wasn't very well and they needed looking after. And these are both actually based on real events. Like I say in the author's notes of Fury, my mum was the one who encountered the chicken in the living room sleeping on the firewood. And a friend of mine, when he was off hitchhiking through the wilds of wherever, went to the farmhouse to say, can we camp in your field or whatever? And there was a horse asleep on the sofa because it was ATAD unwell. And I remember being told these at the time, not so much my mum's, because I was only young when she told me this. I was like, yeah, mum told me something, does it matter? But certainly the horse, when it was my best mate as a teenager, I thought, if I ever write a story, I've got to include these. And they're originally going to be included in the Marauding Mummies of Milnthorpe, as the story was initially going to be told. I did actually write a first draft for it many, many years ago. But then when I came round to writing Casebook, Sam's first book, it didn't make the cut. I ended up ditching it. And no, we'll come back to that later. But I actually reworked the whole mummy thing and put that into the Marauding Mummies of Morecambe. And the idea of it being set in Milnthorpe just got left to one side. I thought, yeah, it's nice ideas, but I don't see how I can actually use these in the story because they are so bizarre. But then I came along with the idea of the generous genie, the idea of Sam and Spliff going to get this Christmas tree, picking up the genie lamp. I thought, you know what, this is a good time. This will work. We'll put them in there. And it does. And the Thornthwaites, they're just wonderful characters. They are sort of based upon my mum and dad's old landlord and landlady when they were first married. When they first married, they lived in this little cottage on the edge of a farm in a village called, probably a hamlet at the time, called Hardwick, in the centre of Northamptonshire. And the farmer who owned it, I think they were called the Jeremses, I think. Very, very sort of like rural name for like Northamptonshire. And they look very much like the Thornthwaites do in the book. In fact, I went camping there as a teenager. I would have been about 15, 16. And yeah, the Mr. and Mrs. Jones were just like the Thornthwaites are in the book, you know, very sort of like not caring about social niceties. They were just sort of like normal farming folk doing what normal farming folk do, and you pile on the stereotypes a bit, and then suddenly you've got the Thornthwaites, and it was great to create them. They're one of those characters which just sort of like evolved on the spot rather than having to take too much time to think about, because I had this sort of like idea already there in my mind. And yeah, so it's great fun. So that was the Thornthwaites of Whitbarrow View Farm. So if you're ever up by Whitbarrow in Cumbria, go and have a look around so you can see a farm, and if you can smell roasted chicken or a sofa which smells of horse, you probably found the right place. Anyway, hope you liked that little ramble. Again, please give me a quick little like, and if you fancy, quick subscribe. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye now.